Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation. This is your not quite matchday news, guys. It's tomorrow, which Sunday football. I prefer Saturday football. We all love Saturday football. Well, today we have got for you Chris Boyd, we've got Bojan Miovski, we've got Kemar Roofe, we've got Brian Priska, and of course we've got the big man himself, Mr. Philippe Clement, all to come up in this video, guys. So stay tuned for your favourite bit. Obviously, I'll use the smart seek to find it. Anyway, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about Kemar Roofe and his future, which may well be coming to an end very soon. First of all, then we'll talk a little bit about what Chris Boyd has had to say about Bojan Miovski before touching on Philippe Clement's press conference ahead of the game against Hearts on Sunday, and then finishing off with what the news from the Sparta Prague campus. Obviously, we look forward to that game on Thursday, and Brian Priska delivering a bit of an injury bombshell for Prague. Well, let's start off by talking about this man here. Now, once again, as Philippe Clement revealed at his press conference today, he is, guess what? Yes, that's right, unavailable due to injury. Now, Kemar has had some great moments for this club, few and far between due to the injuries. Obviously, the leading goal scorer tag that he got during the 55 season, then that goal against Aberdeen at Hampden. Some fantastic moments, just to name but a couple. But one thing that has dogged Kemar Roofe, not just throughout his Rangers career, but throughout his entire career, has been his injury record. Kemar has missed so many games, and it just seems that it seems to be one injury after another, after another, after another. Now, according to Michael Beale, yes, that man again, we were led to believe that the operation on his hip that he had this summer and the training camp that he did in Dubai, that everything was sorted, that he was back to being a new Kemar Roofe. But guess what? We've discovered, we know that he's back to being the same old Kemar Roofe after having yet another injury and missing yet more time. Now, listening to what Philippe Clement has been saying about injuries, about players being fit, about lifestyles, about fitness targets and strength, conditioning, all of this, it does seem to me that he is very frustrated with certain players and their constant injuries. According to media reports, Kemar Roofe is one of those prime examples of players that he has been about reached the end of his tether with. Now, according to the reports that I'm reading in a number of different sources, Kemar Roofe will be definitely allowed to leave at the end of the season for nothing if we cannot find anyone who wants him in January. Now, according to the reports that I'm reading and the sources that I'm hearing from, Rangers are willing to sell Roofe for a cut down price in January just to get him off the wage bill and to get him out of the club due to the fact that he is so constantly injured. Now, look, Roofe is a very talented striker, don't get me wrong. He is a very good finisher, but I wholeheartedly agree with what they're planning to do. The situation is that this guy is on around about £26,000 a week. That money could be quite easily freed up to go and spend on either renewing contracts of those that we want to keep, or obviously going out and signing other players who could come in, play far more regularly, and have far more a positive effect on the team. So I honestly agree. If we can ship him on in January, fantastic, but it will be very difficult to find a buyer for someone who is constantly injured, unless we can get him back now and get him a little run in the team, or at least some minutes here and there. But what is more likely, obviously, is that he will be allowed to leave at the end of the season. And it's about time. Look, he's had his chances. He's had enough opportunities to show that he can get fit again. He obviously can't. We cannot afford to be paying him silly wages. It's time for him to go. It's absolutely time for him to go. And, if you look at the list of players who are out of contract this summer, John McLaughlin, Leon Balogun, Borna Barisic, John Lundstrom, Ryan Jack, Kemar Roofe, Abdallah Sima, who's obviously on loan, Ross McCausland, Aaron Lyle and John Lee Yefeko, all players whose futures will need to be decided this coming summer. And we will be releasing a video on that, talking a little bit about that and who we would keep and who we think should not stay at the club. Well, that man, arch Rangers fan, former Rangers player, quality striker, Chris Boyd, has been talking about strikers, one of his favourite topics, of course. Now, there's a lot of fans, Rangers fans, and some pundits as well, suggesting that Rangers should go out and sign Lawrence Shankland in January, or if they can't get him in January, to get him in the summer transfer window. However, Chris Boyd has suggested that rather than Shankland, Aberdeen striker Bojan Miovski would be a much better bet for Rangers. Miovski has had a lot of success in the Scottish Premier League, has scored goals, and is a very high quality player. He's certainly someone who has even attracted attention from down south, which obviously has inflated his price tag. If you look at Bojan Miovski in terms of his stats and his his career statistics, going back as far as his time at Renova in the Macedonian First League, he scored 5 goals in 27. Then to MTK, where he scored 19 in 60. Now for Aberdeen, he scored 45 in 146 games. Last season, scoring 18 goals. Miovski has proven that he can score goals at this level. He can score goals in the SPL. And it seems like Chris Boyd is very much in favour of Rangers going in and trying to sign him. Now, look, he is a very good player, but I honestly think the one downside of Bojan Miovski would be the fact that because he plays for Aberdeen, then naturally would be an inflation in the price for Rangers asking for him because of the fact that it is Rangers. At the end of the day, Aberdeen will sell, but they would sell at a vastly inflated price as to what they would charge another team in Scotland or even a team from south of the border. Now, Chris Boyd reportedly says that Miovski is worth about £5 million, which he believes could actually put Rangers off pursuing the striker. But Boyd said when it comes to Aberdeen, they probably have the best striker out of the lot. Obviously, kind words for Bojan Miovski. Miovski has impressed me a lot since he joined the club, and the more I see of the North Macedonia international, the more I have to think the Dons are lucky to still have him at the club. Put it this way, I wouldn't be surprised if he was to be sold in the January window. That's not something Dons fans will want to hear, especially where they are sitting right now. But Miovski's displays at home and in Europe certainly have attracted attention. If Rangers are looking for a new hitman in January, then they could do an awful lot worse than making an attempt to sign him. I know the chances of Aberdeen selling their best player to Rangers are highly unlikely. I also reckon that Miovski could command a fee of around £5 million. That's probably a little too rich for Rangers' blood right now, given the money they spent. And here's the key bit that Chris Boyd said, wasted this summer. But there's no doubt the Dons talisman will be interesting clubs. Isn't it interesting that Chris Boyd said, and wasted this summer? So, as Chris Boyd has said, he really is not overly impressed, is he, with the calibre and the quality of signings that were made this summer? I think possibly speaking about Sam Lammers and Cyril Dessers in particular. But certainly interesting that our former striker and our well-known supporter on Sky Sports, against that absolute idiot who he has to work with, has identified Bojan Miovski as being a possible player that Rangers should and could be interested in January. Certainly, I think Miovski could do a job. I think he's a very fine player. I think he's someone who will score goals at this level. And I just think the fact that, with Rangers, he would get so many more opportunities to score. With so many, with more creative players who are more able to create chances for him with crosses and with balls through the middle. I just think that Miovski would get a sack full of goals at Rangers. I think it is a decent suggestion from Chris Boyd. And if there was to be any legs in it, I would definitely be a supporter of that statement. Okay, before we touch on what Philippe Clement had to say in his press conference, we'll just touch on what Brian Priska, who is, the manager of Sparta Prague. Now, Rangers, as we know, battled to a 0-0 draw out in Prague last time in the Europa League, a game that very much kept Rangers' goal-scoring hopes alive. However, qualification hopes, my apologies, qualification hopes alive. Now, Brian Priska has been talking about the fact that Sparta Prague will be very much depleted for their trip to Ibrox, with 3 of their key players ruled out, which is certainly good news for Rangers. Because let's face it, first half, Prague were unlucky not to be 2-3-0 up, but for the skills and talent of Jack Butland. Second half was obviously a lot different. I think a lot of credit needs to go to Philippe Clement with how he reorganised the team, what he got from the team, and how he responded to what Prague had been doing. So certainly some excellent man management, in-game management from Philippe Clement. Now, according to Brian Priska, Sparta Prague captain and Czech international Ladislav Krejci will miss the game in Scotland with a fractured cheekbone. Left winger Lucas Halaslin is also set to be absent for the game, and midfielder Matthias Reiners, who was taken off with an injury during the cup win. He says, Brian Priska said, unfortunately, it looks like we won't have Krejci, Haraslin, and I'm massacring these names, and Reines for a period of time. But it was part of the game. That was the 22nd match we've played this season so far. I also have a lot of players who have featured for their national teams. You collect injuries and you just have to deal with it. So it looks like Brian Priska and Sparta will come to Ibrox depleted, which is obviously is good news for Rangers. Now, obviously, the intention has to be that we win our 2 home games against Aris and Sparta, putting us on 10 points, which would certainly put us in pole position to qualify for the knockout stages and be in Europe after Christmas, which would be absolutely fabulous news indeed. Well, let's turn to this man now, Mr. Philippe Clement. I think Philippe Clement has been speaking to the media ahead of Sunday's game against Hearts in the Viaplay semi-final. Now, as always, Clement was on fine form and batted away stupid questions, played straight bats to others, and put journalists in their place the way he has since he arrived at the club. You've got to say you absolutely must love this guy. He is absolutely superb. Now, what did Philippe say and how would we interpret what he said? He said, we need to do what we have been doing over the past few weeks. We know it will be a tough challenge. It's a big game and everyone needs to be ready. And I think obviously it's made a hell of a lot tougher by the fact we just played them very recently. That's always a problem. When you play a team again in very close proximity, you need to come up with a bit of a change, a bit of a curveball to your tactics to kind of unsettle them and put them off guard as you often will find that that they'll be expecting you to do probably very similar to what you did in the last game you played. He also said we focus on the game at hand and putting all our energy into that and doing our best to get the result. So again, he's talking about the fact that it's game by game, week by week. This is not talking, by the end of the season, this is going to happen. It's talking about building this team, building it up and working game by game, a very progressive attitude by Philippe Clement. He talked as well about the fact that he's not listening to what everyone else is saying. This was obviously, the fact that a lot of people are saying that Rangers should now win the League Cup with Celtic been out, and and also the displays that we've had is this showing that we are back on track for the treble or back on track to challenging the league. But Clement's quite clear that he's not listening to that. He's staying very focused on Rangers, keeping the team focused on themselves initially and not being distracted by those outside noises, which for me is exceptionally important. You don't want outside noises, outside people disturbing your preparation and disturbing what you're doing, especially when whatever you're doing is working and showing clear progression. And this, I think, was backed up by what he said in the press conference. Clement said, the players are understanding what we want to do, so it's becoming more fluid. It's good for the players getting experience together, allowing the team to grow. And I think that's what we're seeing. And that's all we ever wanted to see this season, I mean, how many times did we talk at the start of the season about Michael Beale's team gelling, showing signs of progress, showing signs of a structure, and it never been there throughout the entire time that he was here. But now under Clement, we're already seeing a structure, a progression in that structure, a fluidity to that structure, a progression to the way they play, an aggression to the way they play, and development to that aggression and development to that style. And Clement is certainly moving this team forward, and that is the key thing. You must never stand still in this game, and Clement quite clearly is not allowing his players to do that. He also talked about availability of players. Now, players who will be unavailable for this game on Sunday include John Suter, who has a muscle injury, Nico Raskin, Rabbi Matondo, and Kemar Roofe. And as I mentioned, obviously, Kemar Roofe is frustrating him. Raskin and Matondo, have been out for a little while, especially Matondo's been out for a little while. He gave no indications on return dates, as he seems to not want to do. He doesn't want to seem to give away too much to his opponents, which is very, much in contrast to Michael Verbal Diarrhea Beale. He was asked, obviously, will everybody else who is not mentioned be available? Obviously, I think hinting at Tom Lawrence. I think, he said, providing everything goes well in training and we see what we need to see from them, then yes, they will be available. So it looks like Tom Lawrence could be back on the bench on Sunday, which is excellent news if he is, because he is a quality player and certainly someone who can have an influence on a game. Clement talks about his love of coaching, his love of making players better and developing players, his love of winning trophies. And I think, he said, I have won trophies in my career, but the satisfaction is having this with the players and the staff. So again, very much a team ethos that we're in this together. We're making progress together. We're playing together. We're aiming for something together. He went on to say, I want my players to be ambitious. The medals will come if you do the correct things. You need to be brave and not be afraid to make mistakes. It's important how you react afterward. And that is what I want to give my players. He says, as a coach, you need to invest in your players and see the qualities they have and build on this. You need to see potential and give them the tools to develop. And it's quite clear that Clement is very much about this, identifying individual player traits, developing individual player traits, improving individual players, giving individual targets to players to actually play up to and to develop themselves. And I think this is having an effect on those players that were certainly being underperforming under Michael Beale. I think maybe, looking at what Michael Beale did and said, he was probably quite confusing for the players as to what he exactly wanted from them. There's that saying, is if you throw enough shit at a wall, some will stick. And I think that's what he was hoping with the players. Whereas Clement seems much more clearer, much more concise with what he wants the players to do. And I think he's making it a lot easier for the players to understand and then develop and then move and then keep on moving forward and keep on making progress. Philippe Clement says, I want my team to be motivated, everything regardless of the trophy or the occasion. They must be like this every day and show the best of themselves. So I think, it's saying that no matter what competition we are playing in, no matter where we are playing, that there is that need to, to actually move forward, to progress, to win, to be the best you can be. Now, that question, going back to that question about external noise, was also in reference to the fact that a journalist said that now that Celtic are out of this competition, is it pretty much surefire that Rangers are going to win the competition and that Rangers should be the favourites for this? And this is where he said about shutting down external noise, not listening just because somebody is saying something around the fact that Celtic are not in this trophy. It is very much a very positive attitude. You can't have complacency. And that is always the risk, I suppose, when you're hearing day in, day out, week in, week out, oh, Celtic are not in it, you should win it. Celtic are not in it, you should win it. We don't want complacency. We need the players to appear ready, the players to be ready, and the players to be good to go on Sunday. Well, guys, let me know what you think of what Philippe Clement has had to say in his press conference. I certainly enjoy Philippe Clement's press conferences a whole lot more than Michael Beale's. I think Michael Beale's gave me PTSD in the end. They were so bad. And obviously, we build towards Sunday. We'll have a match day news, obviously, on Sunday. And we've also got a live stream of the game and a breaking news podcast as well going out as the team is announced for the semi-final. It would be great if you come and join me for that tomorrow, Sunday. Anyway, thanks for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. And as always, on the way out, well, actually, before we go out, one thing I'd love you to do is to hit the sub button, guys. Still about 60-70% of people who watch these videos not subscribed. If you all subscribe, we managed to smash that target of 4K by the end of November. Even it's November now, isn't it? And actually, on the way out, as always, guys, two things. Number one, smash the like. And number two, remember always, never forget, we are the people.